My name's Reza Rassool, CTO of Real Networks. I'm an expert apparently in streaming media and digital video. This button. So by way of introduction, you probably all recall Real Networks. There might be one or two of you too young in the audience. Real Networks, when the Earth's crust was cooling, invented streaming media. And when you recall experiencing streaming media in the early days of the internet, you probably recall the dial-up sound to the internet. And, your kids don't know what that was. And you could only use the internet while mom and dad, if a call came in, then if someone wanted to use the family landline, you had a problem. Anyway, Real Networks, I'm going to weave a story about the pivot of Real Networks from the inventor of streaming media to now a leader in AI, and how that pivot, the buzz that we're hearing today about generative AI is reminiscent of the buzz of the disruption in the early days of the internet. So for a history lesson, the story of Real Networks and that pivot, you might remember some of the products. The Real Player is still being used by many people. It's installed on many computers. In fact, everyone with a smart camera, if you've got a security camera, the streaming media protocol that's inside that camera, RTSP, was invented by Real Networks, free as an act of philanthropy to the industry. So all the benefits that came from the streaming media industry didn't necessarily accrue to the inventor. Let's see. Towards the end of the timeline, you can see two new brands, one called Context and one called Safer, and I'm going to talk about that. There are two AI divisions. The Safer division focuses on computer vision. It's specifically a face analytics stack that does biometric authentication. We focused on biometric access control because out of all the use cases that you could pursue with a very successful facial recognition stack, we chose to use the ones that had less sort of societal headwinds and friction. And when you mention, hey, we got face recognition technology, everyone sort of takes a sharp intake of breath. But hey, everyone is comfortable opening up their phone with face recognition. So we focused on those applications where it's a consumer convenience. So the product that the Safer division brought to market is now used in access control, replaces your badge reader with a biometric reader. So now your face is your badge. Okay, so what could possibly go wrong? So in order to create an AI that's capable of recognizing faces to the level of accuracy to give you access to a building, we had to make this AI obviously very, very accurate. Had to be accurate, and training a model, a classifier model, is extremely difficult. Takes a lot of data. Real Networks, fortunately, had many consumer-facing brands, and so part of our capability was having access to a huge repository of face data. We powered many video products, many mobile phone applications where customers backed up their camera rolls to the cloud. And of those users where they gave us permission to use their data for training purposes, we had this worldwide data training set from which we were able to train a face recognition model. Now, when we showed this off to the founder of Real Networks, my boss, Rob Glazer, he said, you know what? I don't want to be another Me Too in the cloud forensic face recognition service. we need to be the world's best for live video. And in order to do that, as an engineer, I translate what the business requirements are into engineering requirements. It has to be fast. It has to be fast enough to keep up with video coming at you 30 frames a second. But it also has to be small enough to be embeddable into an edge device, into an IoT device. And so translating those business requirements into engineering requirements meant we were making, we had to make the smallest and fastest AI model we could, as well as it having to be accurate. An extra data point, it's more than a data point. In fact, it's one of the fundamental requirements that we added into the development was around bias. Probably one of the biggest criticisms around AI-based facial recognition is bias. And for me, it was very personal. I was speaking with Dr. Pham here, who is, this is very interesting actually. I'm thinking now on the fly, if this lecture, if this talk was being broadcast or being streamed, and let's say it was just in audio only, the classifier that the audience are running in their head about the author, about the speaker, would classify me based on what they hear. So when I spoke to Dr. Pham, I said, Frenchman. Okay, and he heard my voice and he thought, okay, an Englishman. Right. Now you switch on another channel, another factor of authentication. You look at my face and you say, okay, this doesn't click. Hold on, there's something misaligned here. So identity is very important. Let's load up the stakes even further. I was born at the tip of Africa in a place called Cape Town, right in the middle of the darkest period of the history of that country, South Africa, at a time when people were classified by how they look, and that classification determined their level of citizenship and the level of citizenship and services that they had access to, who they could marry, where they could live, where they could go to school. So the stakes were high for me as an engineer when I headed this development into an AI that could identify humans. It was very personal. So we made one of the fundamental requirements that this AI should have the least bias possible. So how do you train an AI for low bias? Well, it's the subject of a separate talk I've written and talked about extensively on how to train, how to engineer AI for low bias. This is an important feature, and it's not something that is a byproduct or an after-the-fact consideration. It needs to be fundamental in your training set, how you curate the data and so on. So I'm speaking a bit off the cuff there. None of this is on the slide, but I thought it's worth, since I talked to Dr. Pham, I thought it's worth just dwelling on that point. So that's one division. And the second division, apologies, the slide's going a bit long. The second division is called context. And the context division focuses on natural language processing. It is in everything you're doing at the moment on your mobile phones. You don't know it. Context lives in the nation's mobile networks, and it sees all of the SMS messages between mobile operators. And we are running mission-critical AI that scans the messages for spam and for malicious activity. And that is a massive AI operation that is processing billions of messages. And both of these two together have kind of a security focus, but it's they're AI. So Real Networks is banking its future and pivoting it from its original streaming media roots to AI. Okay, but we're talking about generative AI. So what is generative AI? The two divisions build what are called classifier AI. So the topology of a classifier AI is it's fat on the input. Let's see, in the case of context, the input might be a 160 character SMS message, and the output is a simple spam or ham indication. It could be just a single bit coming out if you wanted to do it like that. It turns out to be a spamminess score, maybe a floating point number. In the case of Safer, where they're looking at a face, the input would be the pixels of a face. And the output would be a vector that is unique for each individual, no matter how you orient your face, no matter whether you're wearing glasses or a mask, whether you've grown a beard, whether you've aged a certain amount. And it should create a vector that is very close to the vector that is you, or the reference image of you. And so by that mechanism, we're able to identify. It turns out the human brain does something very similar, although probably a lot better than the machines do it. These classifier models are tested by NIST, the face recognition sort of bake-off, and these are scored for accuracy, for speed, for size, and bias, and many other factors. And we're in those rankings, and we score very highly. But generative AI is not built in that same way. The model topology is very different. With generative AI, it's thin on the input and fat on the output. You give a simple prompt. I was on the Zoom call demonstrating how ChatGPT could work with code development with one of the heads of one of the divisions, and I said, okay, I'm going to show you with generative AI how you can develop an app. And so we typed in, I said, go and type in a simple command. Okay, create me a dentist appointment app in React Native. And ChatGPT thinks for a while and cranks out all the files necessary to create such an app. We're going to go into that a bit more, but this is the nature of the beast. These apps, or the generative AI model, the topology is very different to the classifier model. So what is generative AI? There's the sort of Wikipedia type of definition, but it allows you to take in a small amount of data called a prompt, and it can output a paragraph, a blog post, an essay, if you want. But it can also output more than just text. It can output images, video, even audio. And specifically relevant for this audience, it can also create code. And we'll come on to that in a bit. Here's what's going on. So this is data from what we're doing. The bottom line is the way in which our classifier models have grown over time. The top line is the path of the large language models. And so this is kind of a Moore's law of AI. It's not clear that we can go much further beyond GPT-4. This is a crazy, because perhaps GPT-4 sucked up all of the data, all of the training data that's currently available or easily available. It's trained, I think 60% of its training data is the common crawl, which is a crawl of the entire internet that happens monthly. Then it's trained on other data repositories that are publicly available online, largely written in English, and not in private silos. So maybe the next phase of growth for the large language models, if we're going to train them on bigger and bigger data sets, is going to be to mine into private repositories, mine into data that's not commonly accessible, and mine into data that's more unique to a vertical, more related to a particular vertical. So as you can see down the bottom, the classifier models, if all of you recall the series Silicon Valley, the guy was making a hot dog, not hot dog model. You remember that? So any garage startup could get into the business of creating a classifier model. The large language models are really the domain of wealthy, deep-pocketed companies. So you can see OpenAI getting there. So, question: will AI take over the world? Well, the answer is probably, probably, and eventually. Well, we can ask ourselves: is GPT-4 a super intelligence, and what about its misalignment of its motivations with that of humanity? Okay, well, you can ask the same question about corporations. Are corporations super intelligent? Yes, they are. Corporations are collections of individuals that turn out to be more powerful, more intelligent than humans, and their motives are not necessarily aligned with that of humanity. But then ask yourself, is wheat super intelligent? No, wheat's pretty dumb. Hey, but it's the most successful species on the planet if you look at it from that point of view. It actually employs humans to cultivate it, to feed it, to nurture it, and spread it around. So I find these questions somewhat clickbaity and philosophical. Yes, we are going to live with AI in a sort of symbiotic way, in the same way we live with wheat and we live with corporations. It's a kind of a give and take. But let's see if we can answer a simpler question. Will I lose my job to AI? Well, end of last year, Harvard and Stanford announced that they had the GPT-3 at that time, 3.5, take the SAT exams. And the bell curve of the intake that they had in 2022, GPT scored higher than the average. So what they did was they said, well, let's take the low-scoring cohort and tell them to retake the SATs, this time with the help of the chatbot in a sort of open book test. And lo and behold, they scored higher than the high-scoring cohort. So the takeaway for me is I'm not going to lose my job to AI. I'm going to lose my job to a candidate that's using AI. But let's see if we can look at previous technology disruptions and how it would affect employment. So employment and trades were once very, very stable over many, many generations. People were actually, their identity, their name, their family identity was based on their occupation. The name Smith, the name Cooper, Fletcher. Cooper is someone that makes a barrel. Fletcher is someone that makes arrows. People had family names based on their occupation because those occupations were handed down generation after generation. Look at the Spanish name Herrero, which maps onto Smith. Barbero. Well, I think barbers aren't going to be replaced by AI, not anytime soon. Cabrero, maybe a goat herder. No, I think their jobs are safe. Indian names, Banerjee, Gandhi. Banerjee is a shopkeeper, I think. No, teacher. Gandhi is a perfume seller. And Rassool, my last name, means messenger. Okay, so, but the jobs are changing so fast. You know, I don't come across people with the last name system analyst, We got 5 minutes left. And but how do we adapt? So work will change. Look, it's inevitable. Email, the word processor did away with the typing pool. Email did away with the mailroom. The switchboard's gone to voice over IP. Desktop publishing eliminated the reprographics departments that most corporations would have. And the thing that brought me to America, the sort of invention of being able to edit a movie on a computer, that disrupted Los Angeles, disrupted Hollywood. But do we lament that loss? Things are moving along faster. In fact, that disruption sort of democratized many of these sort of lines of work and allowed everyone to be able to do that. The digital media disruption that Real Networks was born in enabled more people to engage in video, more people to create videos, more people to tell stories, but we're focused on software. So I want to cover a little bit about this. We're about to wrap up another 2 or 3 more slides, but I want to tell you about the CoPilot X, which is the next generation, the GPT-4 powered version of the GitHub Copilot. GitHub's actually now owned by Microsoft. So what Microsoft did was it enabled OpenAI, which is its a big investment. It enabled OpenAI to build a model called Codex, and that's now wielded. You can go and apply to get an early sneak peek of it. But it's IntelliSense on steroids. It can generate code inline in your IDE, great at writing unit tests, great at writing documentation, finding and fixing bugs. It's really going to become the new norm. Early analysts claim 14 to 15%. I think it's probably going to be a lot higher. It realizes the vision from the 80s and 90s of code reuse, but it does it in a different way. It's actually trained on numerous projects that are in GitHub, and I think in other sources as well. But it allows young programmers to stand on the shoulders of previous generations and learn a lot faster. So it's likely to set the new normal. So how do I prepare for the thing I'm calling software 2.0? Maybe it's the post-agile world, Eunice. Maybe this is what it is. Programmers really need to learn to use co-pilots, but don't give up the pilot seat. This might be the golden age of product management, where a product manager can envision, can translate what they visualize into a prototype really, really fast. And in the same way that digital video transformed movie making, yes, the film cutter's job and the film processing lab's jobs, those have gone. But the person that has a story to tell can translate that into a movie really quickly, the same way a product manager can translate into it. So, don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. Maybe a minute for questions. Okay, we've got a question.
How do you feel about open calls, including Elon Musk's name on it, for slowing down AI development?
Yeah. Okay. The fact that it came from Elon Musk, I'd discount it, but I don't think it's a practical thing to do. It's not practical. Wait for what? It's not. Knowing everything that I know of, or that we all know of history, it's not going to slow down. Yeah. So it's not going to slow down. I don't know what criteria you're going to wait for. If he's saying wait until we've digested the moral implications, the ethical implications. Gosh, coming from that voice, I think that's charming. Yeah. Well, okay. So this current, not broadly on AI, but maybe on large language models, the fact that they're trained on publicly available data. There's a lawsuit to track. I think it's the Getty Images lawsuit, where the guys trading the models that create images. They say, well, yes, we looked at your artwork, but we just gained inspiration from it. And then Getty Images produces, okay, well, here's the final painting your models produced, but why has it got our watermark in there? So you've not just gleaned inspiration from it, you've actually got the actual pixels in some big storage place. So we should watch that one carefully in terms of regulations. There are on face recognition. Maybe you're talking about recognitions. If you look at Europe has come up with the GDPR, which is lays a level playing ground. You know what the constraints are. Unfortunately, within the US, there's no federally mandated regulation, and so it's a big kind of minefield of liability from state to state, even city to city. We have to be careful of how we deploy these systems. Eunice, I've got a question for you. And it's interesting that you were comparing waterfall to agile. Gosh, I think that's a done question. That's like comparing the steam engine to the gasoline engine to the internal combustion engine. But we're at a stage now where the internal combustion engine should really be compared now to what's next, to an electric motor. So we should be thinking about what is the post-agile world, and is it this software 2.0 world? I have to say, we've enjoyed a generation where the software engineers, the programmers, basically set the schedule. They said, yeah, it'll be done when it's done. It'll be done when it's done. We're gonna sail to the horizon. That's as far as we can see, and then we're gonna plot another course after that. And we'll tell you, we're not sure when we're going to get to the destination. I think the pendulum's going to swing the other way, and it's, I don't know. I think winter is coming. Sorry, don't shoot me out. I'm just the messenger. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, we got a question over here.
So a question related to generative AI, right? So as you mentioned, it is crawling the web and some publicly available data, right? So just because something is generally correct doesn't mean it's always correct, right? Just because there's a lot of publications around there doesn't mean it's always true, right? Especially we have a lot of fake news nowadays, right? So what do you see in terms of evolution of generative AI going forward to address this problem?
Yeah, so AI is trained on what's called ground truth. You've got your training set and ground truth. But as we know, the internet is full of truth and lies. So it's completely, there's a massive data curation problem. It's the same problem that we faced when we were trying to construct AI with low bias. The data curation is extremely important, and it seems very lacking in, if anyone's played with ChatGPT for an hour or 2 hours and you're having a conversation, you'll see the model starts to hallucinate. In fact, yeah, that's what they call it. It's hallucination. It starts making up data. It starts making up answers, and in a sort of dangerous way. Now, it's been trained on blog posts. It's been trained on Twitter. It's been trained on just a mass of noise. Noam Chomsky says this is not intelligence, and I think Dr. Pham says this is not intelligence. This is autocomplete on steroids, and so don't take the output of these models unvarnished and uncritically, and just paste that in your answer. That's not going to be, you know. There was a paper, I think in the Times, it said the death of the college essay. You'll get a C minus grade. I think that's going to be the new normal. The output of the model should be setting what a C minus is. And if we play our cards right, then this technology raises all boats. It raises the new normal, the expectations of the productivity of software engineers. But for anyone writing a college essay, they're going to have to amp it up now. There's a new normal, and hopefully the optimist in me thinks that we're going to be the better for it. Oh, yeah. Question. Okay.
So obviously there's going to be an open dev kit for GPT-4. Right. What are some of the major kind of applications or developments that you think are going to come out of that open ability to use their generative model?
Right. I mean, this is a fantastic question, and everyone's hunting. It's like the early days of the internet. That's what is so exciting about, what businesses will be transformed in this way. So Gartner says that by 2025, they think all outgoing or 30% of outgoing marketing messages will be generated by AI. Gosh, if you're in that space, then learn how to master those tools, because you're going to lose your job to someone that does master those tools. I'd be looking at ways in which you can use the model to train it on proprietary data. If you're sitting on a stack of proprietary data, that might be useful. And so Dr. Van Roy also talking about models training other models, and you're not just training from a starting ground, but you want to be able to stand on the shoulders of previous generations, just like I suggested the new programmers will be doing, because you're standing on the Codex model, which is what GitHub Copilot's powered by, which was trained on the software that was written over the last 20 or 30 years, ironically by mostly Linux developers who were vehemently anti-Microsoft. But Microsoft acquired GitHub and all of those open source projects and used that source code to train this coding model. So you end up, So it'll be proprietary. I think one of the approaches would be to use proprietary data and train your own. Yeah, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, but I think there's going to be a heap of value.